I'm Harmony, 26, female. I live in a small, quiet house that belonged to my grandmother, a place filled with the scent of old books and lemon polish. I work as a music therapist, spending my days helping children navigate their emotions through melody and rhythm. My life is simple, structured, and centered around one person, my younger brother, Ethan. He's the only family I have left. I thought I knew him better than anyone, but it turns out the person I was protecting was a complete stranger. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Life has a funny way of casting you in roles you never auditioned for. When our parents passed away in a car accident 5 years ago, I was 21 and Ethan was just 16. Overnight, the title of Big Sister expanded to include shades of guardian, provider, and protector. I put my own life on hold, finished my degree online, and worked 2 jobs to keep our childhood home and make sure Ethan never felt the full weight of our loss. He was my purpose. Seeing him succeed, seeing him happy, was the only thing that mattered. Now, at 21, Ethan was a sophomore in college studying business. He was everything I wasn't, charismatic, outgoing, and effortlessly popular. He had a magnetic personality that drew people in, and I was his biggest fan. He still lived with me, commuting to the local university to save money. I never asked him for rent. I just wanted him to focus on his studies and enjoy being young. My salary as a music therapist wasn't huge, but we managed. My pride swelled every time he brought home a good grade or told me about a new friend he'd made. His best friend was Liam. They'd been inseparable since freshman year. Liam was the opposite of Ethan. He was quiet, introverted, and seemed to carry a permanent air of anxiety around him. While Ethan filled a room with his energy, Liam seemed to shrink into the corners. I often thought they were an odd pair, but Ethan explained it simply. I help him come out of his shell, and he keeps me grounded. It made sense. Liam's parents worked overseas, so he spent most weekends and holidays at our house. He was like a second brother, a quiet shadow who followed Ethan's bright light. I tried to make our home a sanctuary for them both. I cooked their favorite meals, listened to their stories about classes and campus life, and offered advice when they asked for it. I was, in my own mind, the perfect guardian. I was giving Ethan the stability we had lost. I saw him as a good kid who was navigating the world with a smile despite the tragedy that had shaped his teenage years. Looking back, the signs were there, scattered like tiny, almost invisible breadcrumbs. There was the way Liam would sometimes flinch when Ethan clapped him on the back a little too hard, or how Liam's eyes would dart around nervously whenever Ethan asked him for a favor, which was often. Ethan always needed to borrow Liam's car, or his laptop, or a bit of cash until his student loan came in. Liam never said no. I chalked it up to their dynamic, the confident leader and the loyal follower. I'd tease Ethan about it sometimes, give the guy a break. I'd say with a laugh, and Ethan would just grin his charming grin and reply, "It's what best friends do, Harm. We look out for each other." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because if Ethan wasn't the good person I thought he was, then my entire world, the one I had so carefully rebuilt from ashes, was a lie. My role as his keeper was the foundation of my identity. I was so focused on protecting him from the world that I never once considered that the real danger might be the person he was becoming, right under my own roof. The first crack in my perfect picture of Ethan came from an unexpected source. My next-door neighbor, Chloe, was a kind woman of about 30 with 2 young kids. We had a friendly, over-the-fence relationship, mostly exchanging pleasantries about the weather or her garden. One Tuesday afternoon, as I was pulling some weeds from my flower bed, she came over, a worried line creasing her brow. "Harmony, can I talk to you for a second?" she asked, her voice unusually hesitant. "I don't want to overstep, but I've seen a few things and, well, I'm a little concerned." I stood up, wiping the dirt from my hands. "Of course, Chloe. What's wrong?" She glanced back at her own house, as if to make sure her kids weren't listening. "It's about Ethan," she began, lowering her voice, "and his friend, Liam. I see them in the backyard a lot, especially near that old shed of yours." The shed was a relic from my grandfather's time, a rickety wooden structure at the back of our property that we used for storing lawn equipment and old furniture. Ethan had recently claimed it as his project space, saying he needed a place to work on some business school assignments without distractions. I thought it was a great idea, a sign of his growing maturity and focus. "Okay, I prompted, confused about where this was going. It's just the way Ethan talks to him sometimes, Chloe continued, struggling to find the right words. It's not how friends talk to each other. It's harsh, demeaning even. Last week, I heard Ethan yelling at him because Liam was late with something. Liam looked terrified, Harmony. He was apologizing over and over again. I felt a defensive wall rise inside me. Ethan can be a little intense, I said, my tone cooler than I intended. He's very driven, and Liam is very sensitive. It was probably just a misunderstanding. Chloe shook her head, not backing down. This was more than that, and there are other things. There are people who come to the house late at night, but they don't come to the front door. They go straight to the shed. I've seen Ethan exchanging packages with them. Liam is always there, too, standing off to the side, looking like he wants to disappear. My heart started beating a little faster, late. Night visitors, packages. This didn't sound like my brother. This sounded like something out of a movie. Chloe, I appreciate your concern, but I think you must be mistaken. Ethan is a full-time student. He's not involved in anything strange. I hope I am mistaken, she said softly, her eyes full of genuine concern. Truly, I do, but as a mom, you get a gut feeling when a kid is scared, and that boy, Liam, is scared of your brother. Her words hung in the air long after she had gone back inside. I tried to dismiss them. Chloe was probably just being an overprotective mother, seeing drama where there was none. Ethan was a good kid. I knew him. He couldn't be the person she was describing. It was impossible. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the image her words had painted. Liam, standing in the dark, looking terrified. I thought about his quietness, his constant anxiety. I had always assumed it was just his personality. But what if it wasn't? What if it was fear? The whisper of doubt had been planted. It was a tiny seed, but it had found fertile ground in my mind, and despite my best efforts to ignore it, it was already beginning to sprout. For the next few days, I tried to push Chloe's words out of my head. I observed Ethan, looking for any sign of the person she had described, but all I saw was my charming, hardworking brother. He was studying for midterms, complaining about professors, and joking with me in the kitchen. He seemed completely normal. He asked to borrow $20, and I gave it to him without a second thought. He thanked me with a bright smile, and the seed of doubt withered a little. But then, on Friday night, something happened. I was working late, and when I got home around 10 p.m., the house was dark except for a light on in Ethan's room. I assumed he was studying, but as I passed the kitchen window, I saw a faint, flickering light coming from the backyard shed. My heart skipped a beat. Chloe's words about late. Night visitors came rushing back. Quietly, I slipped out the back door and crept along the side of the house. The shed's single window was grimy, but I could just make out two figures inside, Ethan and Liam. Ethan was pacing back and forth, his gestures sharp and angry. Liam was sitting on an old wooden crate, his head in his hands. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the body language was clear. This was no friendly chat. This was a confrontation. After a few minutes, Ethan slammed his hand down on a table, and Liam flinched violently. Then the light went out. I scurried back inside, my mind racing. That was not a misunderstanding. That was intimidation. Chloe was right. Something was terribly wrong. The next day, I waited until Ethan and Liam left for the university. My hands were trembling as I walked to the shed. The door was locked with a new, heavy-duty padlock. Ethan had told me he'd put it on to keep his project materials safe. Now the lock seemed sinister. I remembered seeing a rusty box of old keys in the garage. After 10 minutes of frantic searching, I found it. My breath caught in my throat as the third key I tried turned the lock with a rusty click. I pulled the heavy door open, and a musty smell hit me. The inside was not what I expected. There was no half-finished business project. Instead, one side of the shed was set up like a command center. There was a large desk with two high-end computer monitors, a complex-looking router, and stacks of papers. On a whiteboard, there were diagrams and lists of names with numbers next to them. It looked like some kind of operation. My eyes fell on a black ledger sitting open on the desk. I picked it up. The pages were filled with Ethan's neat handwriting. It was a detailed record of financial transactions. There were columns for investment, platform, return, and net. But what made my blood run cold was the investment column. It was filled with dozens of entries, transfers from a single source, LK account, Liam's initials. Liam Kendrick. The sums were staggering, thousands of dollars, transferred every few weeks. Next to them, in the return column, were much smaller numbers, and many entries were just zero. I flipped through the pages. It went back almost a year. I did a quick, rough calculation in my head. The total was well over $50,000. Where would Liam get that kind of money? Then I remembered a conversation from last year. Liam had quietly mentioned that he'd received an inheritance from his grandparents. He'd been planning to use it for a down payment on a house after graduation. It was all there, in black and white. This wasn't a school project. This was a systematic draining of Liam's inheritance. Ethan wasn't investing the money for him. The non-existent returns made that clear. He was just taking it. This shed wasn't a study space. It was the headquarters for my brother's cruel deception. The charming boy I had raised was a fraud, a thief, and a bully, preying on his kindest and most vulnerable friend. The seed of doubt had bloomed into a horrifying certainty, and its thorns were wrapped tightly around my heart. I stumbled out of the shed, the ledger clutched in my hand. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit down on the back steps to catch my breath. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The brother I loved, the boy I had sacrificed so much for, was a predator. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a cold, sharp anger. How could he do this to Liam, to me, to the memory of our parents? My first instinct was to storm into his room and confront him, to scream and demand answers, but a small, rational part of my brain held me back. He would deny it, he would lie, he would twist the situation, charm his way out of it, and maybe even convince me I was the crazy one. He had been lying to my face for over a year. A simple confrontation wouldn't work. I needed more than a ledger. I needed undeniable proof. My mind went to my best friend, Jessica. She was a social worker, and her job involved dealing with complex and often dark family dynamics. She knew about manipulation, coercion, and the ugly side of human nature. I called her, my voice shaking, and asked if I could come over. When I laid the ledger on her coffee table, Jessica's expression shifted from friendly concern to professional focus. She listened patiently as I recounted everything. Chloe's warning, the scene at the shed, the padlock, the shocking discovery. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she took a deep breath. Harmony, this has all the markers of financial exploitation and coercive control. She said, her voice calm and steady, which was exactly what I needed. The victim in this case, Liam, is often isolated and made to feel dependent on the abuser. The abuser chips away at their self-esteem until they feel they can't say no. Her words painted a grim picture that fit perfectly. Liam's social anxiety, his dependence on Ethan, his fear, it wasn't just his personality, it was a result of Ethan's systematic manipulation. What do? I asked, feeling helpless. I can't just go to the police. It's his word against mine, and Ethan, he can be very convincing. You're right, Jessica agreed. The ledger is a huge piece of evidence, but we need to connect it directly to the bank accounts. We need to show the money leaving Liam's account and what happens to it afterward. She gave me a plan. It was risky, but it was necessary. The next evening, while Ethan was out with friends, and I felt a pang of disgust wondering if he was spending Liam's money, I went into his room. My heart pounded in my chest. It felt like a profound violation of trust, but I knew that trust had already been shattered. I found his laptop on his desk. I guessed his password easily. It was our mother's birthday. With Jessica on the phone guiding me, I navigated his browser history and found his online banking portal. He had foolishly saved the login information. My hands shook as I logged in. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. His checking account showed a pattern of large incoming transfers. They didn't say LK account, but the dates and amounts matched the ledger entries almost perfectly. But where was the money going? It wasn't just sitting there. I saw dozens of outgoing payments to online gaming sites, high-end clothing stores, and something called a Forex trading platform that Jessica immediately identified as a notoriously risky and often scam-ridden investment scheme. He wasn't just taking Liam's money. He was gambling it away, living a lifestyle far beyond his means, all on the back of his best friend's trust. The final piece of the puzzle was an email folder I found. It was labeled business. Inside were dozens of emails between Ethan and Liam. Reading them made me physically ill. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Ethan used a mix of aggressive pressure and false promises. This next investment is a sure thing, dude. We're gonna be rich. One email read. It was followed by another a week later. Stop being so paranoid, Liam. I know what I'm doing. Just transfer the money. Don't make this difficult. The tone was bullying, dismissive, and utterly devoid of empathy. He had groomed Liam to believe that this was a partnership, all while systematically robbing him blind. I took photos of everything with my phone, the bank statements, the emails, the ledger. I now had a mountain of cold, hard proof. The investigation was over. Now I had to decide what to do with it. The weight of the evidence I had collected sat like a stone in my stomach. For 2 days, I walked around my own home like a ghost, barely speaking to Ethan. I watched him laugh at a TV show, his face open and carefree, and I felt a profound sense of disconnect. It was like watching a stranger wearing my brother's face. The love and protective instincts I'd felt for him my whole life were now clashing with a cold, hard rage. I met with Jessica again, spreading the photos out on her table. I have everything. I told her, my voice flat, proof of the transfers, the lies, the manipulation. I could ruin him. I could call the police and have him arrested. You could, she said gently. And legally, that might be the most straightforward path. But this is your brother, Harmony. Before you go down that road, you have to decide what your goal is. Is it punishment, or is it stopping the abuse and getting help for both Ethan and Liam? Her question cut through my anger. What did I want? I wanted the person I saw in my brother to be held accountable. I wanted Liam to be safe and to get his money back, if that was even possible. But the thought of seeing my brother in handcuffs, of our family name being dragged through the mud, was devastating. He was only 21. His life would be over. Despite his monstrous actions, a part of me still saw the 16-year-old boy who had cried in my arms after our parents' funeral. I don't know, I whispered. I just wanted to stop. Then we plan an intervention, Jessica said decisively, a controlled confrontation. We don't give him room to lie or manipulate. We present the facts and we have a clear path forward. Together, we mapped it out. The first step was the hardest. We had to involve Liam. I couldn't save him without his participation, but I had to approach him carefully. I couldn't risk Ethan finding out. I waited for a moment when Liam was at our house alone, supposedly waiting for Ethan to get back from a late class. I found him in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. I sat down next to him. Liam, I started softly. I know what's been happening. I know about the money. His reaction was immediate and visceral. All the color drained from his face, and he started to tremble. I don't know what you're talking about. He stammered, his eyes darting towards the door. You don't have to protect him anymore, I said, keeping my voice gentle. I found the ledger in the shed. I've seen the bank statements. This isn't a partnership. He's hurting you. Tears welled up in his eyes. The dam of fear and shame he had been holding back for over a year finally broke. He started talking, the words tumbling out in a rushed, heartbroken confession. He told me how it started with small loans, then escalated to investment opportunities Ethan swore would double his inheritance. When the investments failed, Ethan would blame Liam's negative energy or lack of faith. He made Liam feel stupid and responsible for the losses, trapping him in a cycle of trying to win the money back by giving Ethan more. He was too ashamed to tell anyone. The final piece of our plan was to contact Liam's parents. Jessica helped me find their contact information. I scheduled a video call with them, steeling myself for their reaction. They were, as expected, horrified and furious, but their anger was directed solely at Ethan, and their hearts broke for their son. They agreed to be on a video call during the intervention, providing a united front that Ethan couldn't possibly argue against. We set the stage for Sunday evening. I told Ethan I was making a special family dinner, a request from Liam's parents to thank us for looking after him. Ethan bought it completely, even joking about what a great sister I was. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. As I cooked, my house didn't feel like a home. It felt like a courtroom, and I was about to be the judge, jury, and prosecutor in a case that would tear my family apart forever. But it was the only way. The lies had to end. The air during dinner was thick with unspoken tension. I could barely eat. Liam pushed food around his plate, his face pale and drawn. Only Ethan seemed oblivious, chatting happily about his classes and making jokes. He was so confident, so utterly unaware of the judgment that was about to befall him. Every charming smile he offered felt like a twist of a knife in my gut. After the plates were cleared, I asked them both to sit in the living room. There's something we need to discuss, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Ethan leaned back on the sofa, looking relaxed. Sounds serious. Did I forget to take out the trash again? He joked. I didn't smile. I walked over to the TV and turned it on. On the screen, two faces appeared via video call. Liam's parents, their expressions grim. Ethan's smile faltered. "What's this?" he asked, his tone shifting from casual to guarded. "This is an intervention, Ethan," I said, turning to face him. I placed a folder on the coffee table in front of him. Inside were the photos of the ledger, the bank statements, and the emails. "This is about you and Liam and the $50,000 you stole from him." The color drained from Ethan's face. He looked from me to Liam, then to the faces on the screen. His first instinct was to deny. "Stole? What are you talking about? Liam and I are business partners. He invested with me. It was a bit risky, maybe, but that's business." He turned to Liam, his voice taking on a sharp, commanding edge. "Tell them, Liam. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." Liam visibly trembled, but he didn't look at Ethan. He looked at me, and I gave him a small, encouraging nod. He took a shaky breath. "It wasn't a partnership," he said, his voice barely a whisper, but clear in the silent room. "You told me you'd disown me as a friend if I didn't give you the money. You said I was ruining our chance to be rich. You're twisting my words." Ethan shot back, his charm melting away to reveal a raw, ugly anger. "Harmony, you're believing him over your own brother. I've been working my tail off to build something for us." "I'm not just believing him, Ethan," I said, my voice rising. "I'm believing the evidence." I opened the folder and laid out the photos, one by one, the ledger page showing the transfers, the screenshot of his bank account with the corresponding deposits, the emails where he bullied and pressured Liam. "This isn't a business, Ethan. This is theft. It's exploitation." He stared at the papers, his jaw tight. He was trapped. The lies he had so carefully constructed were being dismantled right in front of him. There was no one to charm, no one to manipulate. He was surrounded by the truth. On the screen, Liam's father spoke, his voice booming with cold fury. "We have already spoken to our lawyer, Ethan. What you have done is a criminal offense, fraud, extortion." The fight went out of him all at once. His shoulders slumped. The angry, manipulative man disappeared, replaced by a scared, cornered boy. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. The facade had not just cracked, it had crumbled into dust, revealing the selfish, frightened person he had become. He finally seemed to understand that there was no talking his way out of this. There were no more lies to tell. The truth, in all its ugly detail, had finally caught up to him. He buried his face in his hands, and for the first time, he looked truly ashamed. The silence that followed Ethan's breakdown was heavy and suffocating. There were no more arguments, no more denials. There was only the quiet, devastating finality of the truth. Liam's parents laid out the terms clearly and without emotion. They were not going to press criminal charges on one condition. Ethan had to pay back every single cent. They would draft a legally binding agreement. He would have to get a job, several jobs, if necessary, and every spare dollar he earned would go towards repaying his debt to Liam. He was also forbidden from contacting Liam ever again. Ethan agreed to everything numbly. He couldn't even look at me. After the call ended, I told him to pack a bag. "You can't stay here anymore," I said, the words feeling foreign and painful in my mouth. "I need you to go to a hotel for a few days while I figure things out." I handed him my credit card, an automatic, sisterly gesture that felt strangely out of place. He took it without a word, packed a duffel bag, and left. The click of the front door closing behind him sounded like a gunshot in the silent house. In the days that followed, a profound emptiness settled over our home. The space that had once been filled with his laughter and energy was now hollow. I found myself walking past his empty room, feeling a confusing mix of relief, anger, and deep, aching sadness. I had done the right thing, I knew that. I had protected an innocent person from my brother's greed. But in doing so, I had lost the only family I had left. The image I held of him, the one I had built my life around, was gone forever. Liam and his family were incredibly gracious. His parents thanked me profusely, telling me I had saved their son from further harm. Liam stayed with relatives for a while before finding his own apartment. He started therapy and slowly began to regain the confidence that Ethan had stripped away from him. He and I spoke a few times. He was healing, but the scars of betrayal ran deep. As for Ethan, he kept his word. He dropped out of college, unable to face anyone there, and started working 2 full-time jobs, one at a warehouse during the day and another cleaning offices at night. He sent me a detailed budget showing how he would make his monthly payments to Liam. His emails were formal, stripped of any emotion, as if he were corresponding with a stranger. A few months later, he asked if we could talk. We met at a neutral space, a small, anonymous coffee shop. He looked different. He was thinner, and there were dark circles under his eyes. The easy charm was gone, replaced by a weary sobriety. He apologized. It wasn't a manipulative, self-serving apology, but a quiet, broken one. He told me he didn't know how things had gotten so out of control. It started small, a way to feel important and successful, but the lies snowballed until he was someone he didn't even recognize. I listened, but I didn't offer forgiveness. It wasn't mine to give. I hope you can fix this, Ethan. I told him honestly, I hope you become a better person. I don't know if our relationship will ever recover. Trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to piece back together perfectly. I am no longer his keeper. That role died the day I opened the shed door. Now I am just a sister grieving the brother I thought I had, and learning to live with the stranger he became. My life is quiet again, but it's a different kind of quiet. It's the sound of starting over, of rebuilding a world not on a foundation of lies, but on the hard, solid ground of truth.